Some of America's most famous foods were created by people who rarely got credit for them. Fried chicken, mac and cheese, cornbread, sweet potato pie. Millions of Americans eat these foods every year. But here's the thing. Many of these recipes began as survival food. Some arrived through the trauma of the slave trade. Some were created from ingredients nobody else wanted. And one was invented by an enslaved chef in France, while the president he worked for took all the credit. This is the story of soul food. Not just what it tastes like, but how it helped shape American food itself. If soul food has a symbol, it might be collard greens. At first glance, they're just large, leafy greens simmered for hours. But what most people don't realize is that collard greens connect modern America to one of history's darkest chapters. The plant itself didn't originate in Africa. It traveled from the eastern Mediterranean through Muslim trade routes into West Africa centuries before the slave trade began. What is African, deeply, unmistakably African, is the cooking tradition. The practice of simmering tough greens low and slow for hours, of absorbing every nutrient into the cooking liquid, and of drinking that liquid directly. That liquid became so valued it earned its own name: pot liquor. Enslaved people were given the leftover scraps from plantation kitchens: turnip tops, ham hocks, pig's feet, ingredients nobody else wanted. And from those scraps, they built something extraordinary. Collard greens became a source of nourishment when food was scarce, and that idea of transforming the unwanted into something nourishing is the heart of soul food itself. Which brings us to a bread that helped feed entire communities. Cornbread is one of the oldest staples in Southern cooking. Unlike wheat bread, cornbread could be made from corn, a crop that grew widely across the American South. Inexpensive, filling, fast to prepare. But cornbread isn't just one recipe. Some versions are sweet. Others contain almost no sugar. Some are baked. Others are cooked in cast iron skillets until the edges become crispy and golden. Entire families have debated the correct recipe for generations. And despite its simplicity, cornbread became the perfect companion for the next dish. A food whose luck was born from catastrophe. Every New Year's Day, millions of Americans eat black-eyed peas for good luck. But the story behind that tradition is far more powerful than most people know. The crop traces back to West Africa, domesticated there over 6,000 years ago. Enslaved Africans brought it to America in the 1600s aboard slave ships, where it was used as provisions during the brutal Middle Passage. In the American South, it was dismissed as food for livestock, which is exactly what saved it. During Sherman's march to the sea in the Civil War, Union soldiers swept through the South, destroying every food source they could find. Corn, wheat, livestock, gone. But they left the black-eyed peas because they didn't consider them real food. Confederate families and the formerly enslaved people living among them survived that winter on what the Union Army had ignored. Then on January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation took effect. Enslaved people across the South ate black-eyed peas that day to mark their freedom. And every January 1st since, they've been eaten as a symbol of survival, resilience, and hope. What began as a crop on the slave ships became one of America's most enduring food traditions. And speaking of survival, the next dish turned one of the South's most overlooked fish into a cultural icon. For many Southern families, catfish wasn't considered luxury food. It was simply available. Rivers, lakes, and ponds across the South provided easy access, especially for communities with limited resources. But properly prepared catfish is exceptional. Coated in seasoned cornmeal and fried until the exterior becomes crunchy while the inside stays moist and flaky. The tradition became so widespread that fish fries evolved into major community gatherings. Food, music, conversation, family. The meal became bigger than the fish itself. And that sense of community leads directly into one of the most beloved soul food classics. Candied yams look simple. They're not. Sweet potatoes slowly cooked with butter and spices until they become soft and almost caramelized. And despite the name, many recipes actually use sweet potatoes rather than true yams. They're different plants entirely. What most people don't realize is that sweet potatoes became important because they grew reliably in southern climates. Productive, accessible. Over time, candied yams became a centerpiece of family gatherings and holiday tables. But while sweet potatoes became famous for sweetness, the next dish became famous for something it never asked for: its history. Most people think mac and cheese is just children's food. Few know who actually brought it to America. His name was James Hemings. He was 19 years old when Thomas Jefferson, who owned him, took him to France in 1784. While there, Hemings trained under some of the finest chefs in Paris. He eventually became head chef for the American diplomatic delegation. He learned French technique. He mastered classical cuisine. And somewhere in the kitchens of Paris, he encountered macaroni and cheese. When Jefferson returned to America, Hemings came with him, still enslaved. He recreated the dish at Monticello. He served it at Jefferson's White House dinners, and Thomas Jefferson received the credit. Hemings eventually negotiated his own freedom, one of only 2 of Jefferson's 600 enslaved people to do so. He trained his replacement, as Jefferson required. Then he disappeared from history. But the dish he brought back didn't. Soul food took that recipe, a dish of European elites brought to America by an enslaved black chef, and transformed it into something richer, deeper, and more layered than anything served in Paris. Multiple cheeses, evaporated milk, baked until the top turns gold. Every family has a version. Every version is the real one. And at every holiday table, it's still the first tray to disappear. For decades, oxtail was considered a throwaway cut, the tail of a cow. Nobody actively sought it out. But necessity creates innovation. Enslaved cooks received the parts of the animal nobody else wanted: the tails, the feet, the intestines. Hours of slow simmering transformed tough connective tissue into something extraordinary. Rich, tender, almost buttery. The broth developed incredible depth. Today, the situation has completely reversed. Restaurant menus proudly feature oxtail. Prices have climbed dramatically. A cut once associated with survival became a luxury item. And that is perhaps the most fitting metaphor for soul food itself. But the final dish may be the most iconic of all. And its story is far more complicated than most people realize. Few foods are more recognizable than fried chicken. Golden, crispy, juicy. Found everywhere from family kitchens to billion-dollar restaurant chains. But fried chicken's history is layered. West African cooking traditions, including the technique of frying meat in palm oil, combined with Scottish immigrants who brought their own tradition of frying unseasoned chicken in fat. Enslaved cooks merged these traditions, added deep seasoning, and created something neither culture had produced alone. What makes great fried chicken special isn't just the crunch, it's the balance. Seasoned crust, tender meat, flavor in every bite. And despite becoming one of the most famous foods on Earth, its roots remain tied to family recipes, community gatherings, and generations of cooks who perfected the technique long before it became a global industry. Because the biggest irony in American food history is this: many of the dishes now seen as classic American cuisine were created by people who were never given credit, who cooked under conditions most people can't imagine, who turned scraps into tradition, and whose recipes now feed the entire world.